Hi everyone, welcome back. In previous lecture we have seen how to use state object in a class component to manage the state of the component, and we have also seen how to use setState method to update the state object in a class component. Now the question is, only class components has an inbuilt state object, then how to define the state variables in a functional components? Well, the answer is hooks. So we can use useState hook to define the state variables in a functional components. Alright, the useState is a hook that allows us to have a state variables in a functional components. Well, here hook is nothing but a function that allows us to use the React features in a functional components. For example, the React features like state object, lifecycle methods and other React features. So just remember, hooks are nothing but a functions that allows us to use React features such as state object, lifecycle methods in a functional components. For example, here we are using useState hook that allows us to use state variables in a functional components. So in order to use useState hook in a functional component, first we need to import useState hook from the React library, and then useState hook is a function that takes initial value as a one argument and it returns the two values. One is the current state and another is a function that updates the current state. Okay, so let us understand the useState hook with an example. So let us go to VS Code IDE over here, and here let's create a new file. So go to components folder and then let's create a new file. Let's give name as user.js. Let's expand this, and here let's create a functional component using arrow function. So just type const, let's give component name as user and then parenthesis and then arrow symbol. Perfect. Next, here let us use useState hook to define the state variables. So just type useState and make sure that you import useState hook from React library. So just click on it and notice here useState hook is imported from the React library over here. And again notice here useState hook is nothing but a functional component and it is imported using named export. That's why we have imported using curly braces here. Alright, perfect. So here useState hook is nothing but a JavaScript function and it takes one argument, that is the initial value. So here let us give initial value as empty. Next, this useState hook returns an array. So here let us destructure it. So array, and the first value is the current state. So let us give state variable name as first name. Second value is the function that we can use to update this first name state variable. So here let us give the function name as set first name. So this is the syntax to use useState hook. So if you can notice here, useState hook takes initial value as a first argument and this useState hook returns an array, and the array contains exact two values. The first value is current state variable name, second value is the method that updates the current state. Okay, perfect. Next, let us write the JSX code and let us access this state variable in a JSX code. So here what I'm going to do is we're going to have a return statement and then parenthesis and then let us have a div. Let us have h1 element and let us give heading as a employee details or user details. Perfect. After that let us have paragraph and then here let us access the state variable using open and close curly braces and then just call first name. Okay, so look at the syntax. In order to access the state variable that is defined by useState hook, we just have to use the syntax like this. Within a curly braces, we just need to call the state variable name like this. Okay, perfect. Next, in order to use this user component in app component, we have to export it. So here let us use default export to export this component. So just type export and then default and then user. Perfect. Next let's go to app.js, go to app component and here let us comment out this employee component, and let us use user component. So here user, and make sure that this user component is imported at the top. Alright, perfect. Next, let us save this file. And if you take a look at the browser, user details, and if you again go to the user.js file and go to user component, the initial value for this first name is empty. That's why nothing is displayed here. Okay, so let us give initial value as a Ramesh. Next, if you save this file and if you take a look at the browser, Ramesh is displayed over here. Okay, so this is how we can use useState hook to define the state variable and assign the initial value to this state variable. Next, let us use useState hook to define one more state variable. So here const and then array. Let us give state variable name as last name, and then method set last name, and then use state, and then pass the initial value further. Next, in order to access this last name state variable, here let us have paragraph element within a curly braces, just pass last name. Perfect. Next, save this file, and if you take a look at the browser, further is displayed over here. Similarly, let us define one more state variable using useState hook. So here let us copy this, paste it over here, and let us give state variable name as email, and let us give method name as set email, and here let us give initial value as ramesh@gmail.com, paragraph within a curly braces, just call email state variable, and then save this file. And if you take a look at the browser, email is printed. Okay, so this is how we can use useState hook to define the state variables in a functional component. Next, let us see how to update the state variables using the corresponding set methods. For example, here in order to update the first name state variable, we have to use set first name method, and in order to update the last name state variable, we have to use set last name method. In order to update the email state variable, we have to use set email method. Okay, so let us go and let us see how to update these state variables using the corresponding set method. So here let us have one button. Let us give button name as a update user. Next, let us attach onClick event to this button. Well, whenever user click on this update user button, then we have to create a event handler method that will handle this update user event, right? So here let us have onClick attribute, and let us pass the event handler name. Let us say update user. Next, let us add the implementation for this update user event handler. Let's create a JavaScript function, and let's give name as update user. Next, within update user method, let us call set first name method to update first name state variable. So right now the first name state variable contains the initial value Ramesh. So let us update the initial value from Ramesh to Ram. So here go to update user method again and just call set first name and then pass value as a Ram. Next, just save this file. Next, let us call set last name, and then let us update the last name state variable from Padhatare to Jadhav. Next, let us call set email method and then pass ram@gmail.com. Perfect. Now we have used set first name method to update the first name state variable. We have used set last name method to update last name state variable, and we have used set email method to update email state variable. Alright, perfect. Next, save this file, and if you go to browser, here you can see update user button is visible. Next, go ahead and click on this update user button over here, and look at here, the user details are updated. Earlier it was Ramesh, now you can see Ram. Okay, and similarly the last name and email also updated. Alright, so this is how we can update the state variables using the corresponding set methods. Okay, perfect. Next, let us see one more example using useState hook. In previous example, we have passed string to the useState hook, but we can also pass the object or array to the useState hook. For example, here let us comment out this and here let us use useState hook, and let us pass initial value as an object. Okay, and then let us have property first name Ramesh, and then last name Padthare, and then email ramesh@gmail.com. Perfect. So this is how we can use useState hook to pass the object. Next, this useState hook returns an array with two values. So here let us have a destructuring array, and the state variable let us give user, and the method name is setUser. Next, save this file and go to return statement, go to div, and here we have used first name, last name, email state variables, but here we are not using these state variables. We are using the user object. It has first name, last name, email properties, right? So in order to access the user object properties, we have the syntax like this: user dot first name. Okay, similarly user dot last name, and then user dot email. Okay, perfect. Next, save this file, and if you go to update user method, within that we have used set first name, set last name, set email methods, right? Right now we are not using these methods, so let us comment it out. And if you take a look at the useState hook, in order to update the user object state variable, we have to use setUser method. So go to update user again, and here just call setUser method, and then let us have its property first name. Let us update the first name from Ramesh to Ram, and then last name property let us update from Padthare to Jadhav. So either you can use single quote or double quote, and then email ram@gmail.com. Perfect. Next, save this file, and if you take a look at the browser, Ramesh Padthare ramesh@gmail.com. So these user details successfully displayed, and along with that you can see update user button. So go ahead and click on this update user button over here, and there we go. The user details are successfully updated. So this is how we can update the user state object using setUser method. Alright, so this is the example that demonstrates how to use useState hook to define the user state object as a state variable. Alright, great. So this is all about using useState hook in a functional component. Alright, so just remember, we use useState hook to define the state variables in a functional components. Alright, great. I will see you in the next lecture.